Hey guys, welcome back to Ripestories. In this Reddit r/EntitledPeople story, I came home from a family emergency to find my driveway completely full of strangers' cars. And my neighbor in a neon vest on my porch selling official parking permits like she owned the place. She even tried to convince the police that I was the intruder. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, Dumb Karen pretends to own my home and rents out my parking to random strangers. So to give you guys some much needed context, I live in a town that is famous for one thing, a massive week-long floral and arts festival that happens every spring. For about 10 days, our quiet little historic district gets absolutely swamped. We are talking hundreds of thousands of people descending on a town that was built for maybe 20,000. Because I live only 3 blocks away from the main park where the festival is centered, my street is basically ground zero. The parking situation during this week is a literal nightmare. The city shuts down half the streets and the ones that remain open are lined with cars before the sun even comes up. People will do anything to avoid paying the $50 event parking fees at the official lots, which are miles away anyway. They will block fire hydrants, park on sidewalks, and, most relevant to my story, try to sneak into private driveways. Now, I own my house. It's a nice older house with a very rare feature for this neighborhood, which is a massive double-wide gravel driveway that can easily fit 6 or 7 cars if you stack them right. I also have a wraparound porch and a small front yard, and yeah, usually it's a blessing. Well, during this festival, it's a curse because I have to spend half my day telling people they cannot park there. Enter the Karen. She lives 2 houses down from me. She is one of those people who moved in about 3 years ago and immediately decided that she was the unofficial president of the neighborhood. She's always complaining about how people mow their lawns or what color someone paints their shutters. She has tried to organize my life several times, telling me I should plant hydrangeas instead of roses because they are more cohesive with the neighborhood aesthetic. I usually just nod and ignore her. Anyway, this year I had a family emergency. My sister, who lives about 4 hours away, had to go into minor surgery and I promised I would come down to watch her kids and help her out for a few days. The timing was terrible because it was the opening weekend of the festival, but family comes first. I packed my bags, locked up the house, and made sure my "No festival parking, private property" signs were clearly visible at the entrance of my driveway. I even put up a small plastic chain across the entrance just to make it extra clear, and yeah, I was gone for 3 days. On Sunday afternoon, I'm driving back home. I'm exhausted, I've been dealing with 2 toddlers and a recovering sister, and all I want to do is pull into my driveway, order a pizza, and pass out. As I turn onto my street, I notice the traffic is even worse than when I left. It is a sea of pedestrians and slow-moving SUVs. When I finally get within sight of my house, I see something that makes my blood start to simmer. My plastic chain is gone. And my driveway? It is full. I don't mean one person snuck in full, I mean it is packed like a professional valet lot. There are 7 cars crammed into my gravel space bumper to bumper, but that was not even the craziest part. As I'm sitting there in my car blocked from my own home, I see Karen. She's sitting in a lawn chair on my front porch. She is wearing a bright neon yellow vest, holding a clipboard, and she has a little folding table set up next to her with a cash box on it. I was so stunned by all of this, I just sat in the middle of the street for a second, getting honked at by the person behind me. I eventually managed to find a spot halfway up on a curb a block away, which I probably would have been ticketed for, and walked back to my house shaking with rage. As I walked up my own driveway, Karen didn't even recognize me at first. She was busy talking to a guy in a minivan who was trying to squeeze into the last tiny bit of grass near my porch. She was saying, "There'll be $60 for the day, sir. Cash or Venmo only. And make sure you keep the permit on your dashboard so the tow trucks don't take you." I watched as the guy handed her 3 $20 bills. She then handed him a piece of paper, a literal printed out sheet that said, "Official resident overflow parking permit," with a fake-looking QR code on it. I stepped into my lawn, cleared my throat. Karen looked up and for a split second, I saw her eyes go wide. But she's a pro. She didn't even blink after that. She just put on this fake customer service smile that did not reach her eyes. "Oh, hello," she said, her voice dripping with that "I'm in charge" tone. "Can I help you?" "If you're looking for parking, I'm afraid we're all full up for the next hour." I just stared at her. "What are you doing, Karen?" "I own and manage the property," she said, waving her hand towards the cars as if she were showing off a prize-winning garden. I felt like I was in an alternate dimension or something. Own and manage? I'm the owner, I live here. You know that I live here. We talked about your flowers 3 weeks ago. Karen didn't even skip a beat. She stood up, tucked the clipboard under her arm, and walked towards me like she was approaching a trespassing solicitor. Sir, I don't know who you think you are, but I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. I actually own this house and the one next door. I rent this place out to some young people who are currently out of town. I don't appreciate you coming onto my property and trying to harass me in front of my clients. The guy in the minivan, who was still halfway out of his car, looked between us, looking very confused. Is there a problem? The guy asked. No problem at all, sir, Karen said, her voice getting that shrill. I'm the victim. Edge to it. This man is just a disgruntled neighbor who's upset about the festival traffic. You're all set. Enjoy the flowers. I looked at her, then at the guy, then at the 7 cars in my driveway. Karen, I have my house keys in my pocket. I have my ID in my wallet with this address on it. Get off my porch, take your little table and give this man his money back right now. She actually laughed at me. It was that condescending, oh, you poor little thing, laugh. Look, if you don't leave right now, I'm going to have to call the cops for harassment and trespassing. I got a permit from the city to operate this as a temporary event lot. She actually held up a piece of paper that looked like it had been designed on Microsoft Word in 5 minutes. It had a city seal that was clearly a pixelated JPEG she had pulled off Google Images. I realized then that there was no point in arguing with her logic because she had completely abandoned reality. She was not just being entitled, but she was running a full-blown scam on my property while I was away. Fine, I said. Call the police. In fact, I'll do it for you. I pulled out my phone and dialed the non-emergency line. While the phone was ringing, Karen started getting agitated. She started yelling at me, telling me I was ruining the community spirit and that I was clearly mentally unwell. She might be projecting there. Anyway, she even tried to grab my phone out of my hand at one point, but I stepped back. The guy in the minivan realized something was very wrong. He asked for his $60 back. Karen snapped at him, telling him, no refunds once the car is positioned. The guy looked like he wanted to argue, but he just shook his head and walked towards the park, probably figured $60 was not worth the headache of a screaming woman. I got through to the dispatcher and explained the situation. Hi, I just returned home to find a neighbor has occupied my driveway, is charging people to park there and is claiming to be the owner of my house. Well, I'm the actual owner and she's refusing to leave my porch. Imagine being the 911 dispatcher hearing that. By the way, just to quickly interject here guys, if you enjoyed these r/entitled people stories, which we don't read too much, please don't forget to like the video and give me a comment because that would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Anyway, the dispatcher sounded like she had heard everything that week, but this was a new one. She told me an officer would be there as soon as possible, but because of the festival, it might take 20 minutes or more. I decided to just wait. I sat down on the bottom step of my porch. Karen was pacing back and forth, muttering to herself about, some people just don't understand how a neighborhood works. Then the client started coming back. A group of 4 college-aged kids came back to their car to drop off some souvenirs. Karen immediately switched back into professional landlord mode. Everything okay, guys? She asked. I stood up. Hey guys, just so you know, this lady doesn't own this house. I do, in fact, and she's scamming you. I've called the police. I'm having every car in this driveway towed as soon as the trucks can get through the traffic. The kids looked terrified. They looked at Karen, who started screeching. Don't listen to him, he's a squatter. I'm the landlord, he's just trying to steal your money. The kids didn't wait. They jumped in their car and peeled out of the driveway, nearly hitting my mailbox. They didn't even ask for their money back, they just wanted out of there. Karen turned on me, her face bright red. Do you have any idea how much money you're costing me? I have a lease agreement with the festival committee. You're not losing money, Karen, I said, trying to stay calm. You're losing my money and you're trespassing and you are about to be in a lot of trouble. Then she did something I didn't expect. She went to her little table, grabbed her cash box and tried to run towards her own house. I didn't try to stop her from leaving, but I did take a picture of her running away with the box. However, she stopped at the edge of my lawn when she saw a police cruiser slowly picking its way through the crowd of pedestrians. The officer got out. He looked exhausted. His uniform was dusty and he looked like he'd been directing traffic for 10 hours straight. What's the problem here? He asked. Karen didn't even let me speak. She ran up to him, gesturing wildly at me. Officer, thank goodness, this man is harassing me. I'm trying to manage my property during the festival and he's been threatening me and shouting at my tenants. He's claiming he owns my house. The officer looked at me, then he looked at the house. Then he looked at the 5 remaining cars in the driveway. Is this your house, ma'am? He asked Karen. Yeah, I've owned it for years. I've all the paperwork inside, but this man won't let me enter my own home because he's blocking the stairs. I was still standing on the sidewalk. I just reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. I handed the officer my driver's license. "Officer," I said, "my name is OP and here's my ID." I just got back from a trip to find this woman, who's actually my neighbor from 2 doors down, sitting on my porch and charging people $60 a pop to park in my driveway. The officer looked at my ID, then he looked at Karen. "Ma'am, do you have an ID with this address on it?" Karen started fumbling. "Well, no, not on me. My ID has my office address on it, but I have the deed inside. I just don't have my keys right now because I left them on the kitchen counter." The officer sighed. He had clearly dealt with Karen types before. "Ma'am, if you live here, you should be able to tell me what the layout of the house is, or better yet, why this gentleman has a key and you don't." I walked up the porch steps, past the stunned Karen, and put my key into the lock. I turned it, opened the door, and stepped inside. I grabbed a piece of mail from the entryway table, a utility bill with my name and address, and walked back. "Here you go, officer," I said, handing him the bill. The officer looked at the bill, then back at Karen. "All right, ma'am, playtime is over. You're going to need to pack up this table and that chair and go back to your own house right now. And you're gonna have to explain to me what's in that cash box." Karen's demeanor changed instantly. She went from confident property owner to hysterical victim in 3 seconds flat. She started crying actual literal crocodile tears. "I was just trying to help," she wailed. "The neighborhood is so crowded, I thought I was doing a service. This house was just sitting here empty and it's such a waste of space. I was gonna use the money to improve the neighborhood park. It was for a good cause." "You were gonna use it for the park?" I asked. "Then why is there a Venmo sign on your table with your personal handle on it?" The officer looked at the table and sure enough there was a little laminated card with her Venmo info. "Ma'am," the officer said, "collecting money under false pretenses on someone else's property is fraud and trespassing, and you need to return the money to the people who parked here." "I can't," she screamed. "They're already gone. I don't know who they are." "Well," the officer said, "that's gonna be a problem for you." At this point, the remaining car owners started trickling back. They saw the police car and panicked. One woman came up holding a giant turkey leg from the festival, looking horrified. "Is my car being towed?" she asked. "Not yet," I told her, "but this lady scammed you. She doesn't own this house and she had no right to park you here. I'm the owner." The woman looked at Karen. "But I paid her $80 for a VIP spot." Karen tried to hide her face behind her clipboard. The officer told the woman she could leave, but he advised her to file a report if she wanted her money back. The woman was furious. She started yelling at Karen, calling her a thief and a neighborhood menace. Within the next 30 minutes, the remaining 4 cars were cleared out. I did not actually call the tow trucks because, honestly, I just wanted the cars gone so I could finally park my own car and go inside. Plus, the people who parked there were mostly just victims of Karen's scam, and I didn't want to ruin their day even more than she already did. However, I was not gonna let Karen off that easy. The officer stayed while Karen packed up her stuff. He made her open the cash box and it was stuffed with bills. There had to be at least $400 or $500 in there. "Where did this money come from, ma'am?" the officer asked. "It is mine. I brought it from home to make change." She lied. The woman with the turkey leg, who was still standing there waiting for her husband to finish getting their car out, piped up. "I saw her putting my $80 in that box 10 minutes ago, and I saw her take money from at least 3 other families while I was walking by earlier." The officer told Karen that he was gonna take her information and that I had the right to press charges for trespassing and fraud. He also told her that if he saw her on my property again, she'd be arrested on the spot. Karen was fuming. As she was lugging her folding table down the sidewalk towards her house, she stopped, turned around, and screamed at me. "You're a selfish, horrible person. This is why nobody in this neighborhood likes you. You would rather have an empty driveway than help families enjoy the festival." I just waved at her from my porch. "Next time you want to be a landlord, Karen, try buying the house first." The next week, I found out from another neighbor, one who actually likes me, that Karen had been asked to step down from the neighborhood watch committee. Apparently, she had been telling everyone that I had assaulted her and that she was the victim of a vicious misunderstanding. And the next one is titled, "Neighbor Used HOA Against Me, posted on r/petty revenge." I will now give the relevant origin story for our villain, scumbag Steve, SS for brevity. So roughly 6 years ago, my wife and I decided to move pre-pandemic times when everything was cheap still. Long story short, there we couldn't find any pre-existing houses that we really liked, but did find the neighborhood where we currently live and built a house with the developer. As people do, we drove by every so often to look at the progress they were making on the house. One night we stopped and went out to look at the hole in the ground as they'd just gotten ready to pour the concrete for the basement walls, but here comes SS, acting like a concerned neighbor because materials have been getting stolen. We explained that we'd be the new neighbors and had a brief conversation where he commented that he and another neighbor are the unofficial neighborhood watch. Missed that red flag at that moment, but we left feeling warm and fuzzy because the neighbors looked after each other. Unbeknownst to us, SS is really just an overactive nosy Nelly and really just looking for ways to screw with people. A bit of foreshadowing now, some things he has done to other neighbors are letting his dog poop and pee wherever she wants without cleaning it up, looking through neighbors' trash cans, asking about a neighbor's doorbell camera, how far it can pick up stuff, etc. I know I'm being a bit nitpicky here, but it tracks for him, and we also found out later that he's a drunk and he'll proudly proclaim and brag about how he beat his DUI that he got after a heated argument with his wife. He's also a scavenger/scrapper, so who's really stealing those materials, Steve? Anyway, one day I decided that I want to start being a bit more self-sufficient and picked up some chickens to raise for eggs. Now, I'm not really that guy that wants to be annoying to my neighbors, but even then, the area we live in is surrounded by farms and is farm-themed. I did my due diligence and checked town ordinances and the HOA guidelines that we were given and found no rules or ordinances against having chickens or poultry on your property. Backtracking slightly, when we signed our contract and went to settlement, we only received a one-page flyer that went over some basic items restricted by the HOA. Like, no grilling in the front yard, no permanent basketball hoops in the street, no boats and RVs on a permanent basis, etc. There was no mention of anything about the types of animals you can or cannot have, so working on the idea that I'm in the clear, I buy some chicks and begin raising them. I decided that since I had a kennel at my old house we rented from my in-laws for a couple of years until we were ready to move, I would go pick that up and set it up around my coop for the chickens to have some free roaming space. The kennel had 4 fence pieces that I could move on my own, but they were heavy, so I backed up my truck to my fence where the kennel was going to go in the backyard and start heaving them over. SS sees me doing this and offers to lend a hand with getting them over the fence, so sure, why not? He asks why I need a dog kennel if I have a fence, to which I inform him it is not for my dogs and it is for the chickens. I should have known that he was gonna cause issues from here, because the next thing he asks is, "Your HOA allows chickens?" It was phrased that way because he had lived there when the first developer of that neighborhood owned it, but they went bankrupt and my developer took it over. It is the same HOA, but we didn't know that at the time. Anyway, I told him that I didn't see anything in the paperwork provided to me regarding chickens, and that was that. Until the next day, SS comes over with a loaf of bread from his mom's bakery that he occasionally helps at and is making small talk when he brings up the chickens again. This time he's only talking to my wife about it, but he again brings up that this HOA doesn't allow it and he was bummed out about that. That's where this story should have ended. Maybe about a week later or so, I got a letter from the HOA. "It has come to our attention that you have chickens on your property. Per bylaw X, that is not allowed and you have 30 days to remove them from your property." I was perplexed. How on earth did they find out about them, and why was I not provided with a copy of the HOA bylaws when I signed the contract for my house? The day after receiving the letter, my wife and I are on our way home from some errands when another neighbor that we are friendly with flags us down and tells us, "I don't know if you know, but SS went up to your fence as was taking pictures of your backyard." For context, there was an empty lot between SS's house and ours, but that finally clicked for us. SS frickin' reported us to the HOA. Me being me, I'm not gonna take this sitting down, I'm gonna fight this. Some BS HOA, which is the Developers Maintenance Corporation, is not gonna tell me what I can or cannot do on my property. Spoiler alert, they did indeed tell me what I couldn't do. Through a bunch of back and forth with the HOA, I got a copy of the bylaws and I started picking through them with a fine-tooth comb. I found out that someone had sent in 7 pages worth of pictures of all the infractions of the HOA rules, including the picture of my chicken coop. I should also mention that I was in hot water with the HOA when I had our fence installed because it was not a split-rail fence with chicken wire, so it didn't match the aesthetic the developer wanted for the neighborhood. They never said another thing about it though, and I ended up being the catalyst for everyone else doing whatever they wanted with fences. Also, since I'm being petty, literally any fence that is white vinyl is technically against the HOA bylaws, as it states that they can only be split rail, a maximum of 5 feet, and made of wood. But here's finally where the petty revenge comes in. You see, SS has an area of his backyard that is blocked off by some wood privacy fencing that is not split rail and much taller than the 5-foot maximum. Oh, and there's some unsightly plant growth that is outside the HOA guidelines regarding the plants you can have on your property. Well, I think it's high time the HOA hears about those gross infractions of their bylaws, seeing as how we are all trying to do the right thing and follow the rules. So I snapped a couple pictures of the privacy fence, the eyesore plants, and the static line he has for his dog in the front yard. I felt a little bad for the dog initially, but he'd leave her out for hours and she would run into the street at cars driving by, since the static line was long enough for her to get her whole body past the curb. I cannot tell you how many almost heart attacks I had because I thought I was about to run over a dog. Well, I can tell you that probably about a week later or so, SS got his nasty gram from the HOA informing him that he needed to move the static line and remove the privacy fence, because I watched with absolute glee as he removed his privacy fence. And yeah guys, who would have known that complying with HOA regulations can be such an amazing source for petty revenge? To be honest, I think we have not read many stories where someone uses their HOA bylaws to spite another neighbor. Or maybe I'm just getting things wrong in my head because we have just read too many HOA stories. Anyway, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to click the bell to not miss my daily uploads. The next one is a beautiful malicious compliance story, which is titled "Karen Wants Her ID Checked." So I work in a casual fine dining restaurant in a downtown area. Prices are not crazy, but high enough that we don't get a super young crowd. I would say average age of our diner crowd is 30 to 60, although it varies more on the weekend. I only include this info so you understand why I didn't initially ask for identification, even though you should always check. So Thursday night, a table of 4 comes in for early dinner, 2 Karens and their daughters. Excellent, I'm ready for them to split entrees and tip me 15%. Not the worst type of table, if we are being honest, but nonetheless, they order a pitcher of sangria, and I tell them I'll be right back with that for them, to which Mama Karen says to me, "You're really not gonna check these girls' IDs? Her birthday was just last month. Aren't you supposed to check anyone who looks under 40? And she's correct. Of course, I should have asked for identification even though their girls were with their mothers, and I was being lazy by assuming they were of age, since their moms didn't stop them from ordering drinks. So I agree with her and tell her that I actually am supposed to check all IDs regardless of age and proceed to look at all 4 of the lady IDs. Unfortunately for Mama Karen, her birthday was a few days previously and her ID had expired. In the state of Michigan, it is illegal to serve alcohol to anyone with an expired ID regardless of age, so I had to deny Mama Karen a glass for the sangria while her daughter and friend shared a pitcher. I did not really have malicious intentions, however, it felt good that Karen's antics backfired on her. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, I will see you again tomorrow.